tankers, welcome back to my videos. I am Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the WZ-121, which is a Chinese tier 10 medium tank. And this, by the way, is one of my favorite tanks in the entire game. It is just so unique in the tier that it's placed in, with the gun and all the characteristics and the aiming time. It just makes it such a different tank from all the other tier 10s. And Wargaming has decided to do me a favor today, and hopefully some of you guys favors, by buffing the reload on the tank. It's going to have another 0.8 seconds quicker on the reload, which means that this tank's flat 3,000 damage per minute when you run gun rammer is going to bump up to about 3,250. And when you run calibrated, it's pretty much going to be like you're running gun rammer plus calibrated, as if you're running calibrated right now. And that is really, epic, because, to be honest, I didn't think this tank needed a buff at all. If you were a competent player and you went down this line and you knew how to play this tank correctly, like you'll see in these two matches, it can perform really well, because this tank used to have only 5 degrees of gun depression. They buffed that. They buffed, I think the first buff they gave this tank was huge. They just gave it a huge damage per minute buff. The whole thing was completely reworked because it was awful. And, they buffed it and it was pretty balanced. I think the reason, though, Wargaming is giving it the slight buff is just because they want to have more people come down this line and try out the tank. However, I will say one thing before I talk about, how good this tank is, and that is, if you're a beginner, the line to get to this tank is very tough. You have to deal with very bad penetration, guns that have awful aiming time until you're sitting still, and the dispersion isn't the best. And if you wanted to run the Russian guns on it, which I wouldn't suggest, they're Russian knockoff guns, they're awful, the other tanks on the line, like the WZ-120 and the T-34 too. And the whole line is tough. Even the tier 10, if you're not really fully aware on how to maximize the gun's capabilities, I wouldn't suggest to go down this line. However, if you're a fan of like the T-49, or you're a fan of any of those bigger alpha guns, and you like the T-34-3 or the T-44 with the 120mm playstyle, you can see that snap right there. You couldn't do that in a tank like the 62A. And the reason this tank can have that ability to snap shells super quickly is because the aiming time on this tank is literally less than 2 seconds, which means you can aim at somebody after having your aiming circle the size of a watermelon, and look how quickly it aimed in on that 140 there. As soon as you stop your tank from moving, you can literally aim in 1.5 seconds, which is so awesome. And it's this great feeling when, there's a tank driving past you, and you just jerk your turret to the side, and it immediately aims in on them, and you can shoot them right through the side. Not to mention, another unique characteristic about this tank is it has a 400 damage gun. And, some of you guys might not know that, but 400 damage is the highest damaging gun for a tier 10 medium in the game, which is awesome. How fun this tank is, really. Because 400 alpha at tier 10 makes you have the ability to sort of scare other mediums away from you. Because if you're in, let's say like that AMX 30B, he's not going to push on me because he knows I can pretty much one-shot him. Now, he'll probably push on me in this situation because he knows he's going to win either way. But, if you're a full health WZ-121, you've got very thick armor. Your front plate, people don't know this, but the WZ-121 is actually the heaviest medium, I think, at tier 10. Not like the E50M heavy, but it's the heaviest type of Russian one with the Russian body style. And it has the most armor. The front plate is sitting at around 208 millimeters. And if you happen to, angle the tank a little when somebody's shooting at you, which I'd highly suggest you do, or instead of angling it, you wiggle it back and forth. That's what I do with it. It makes the armor really funky, and it can range from about 220 millimeters to 240 thick when you wiggle it like that, which is really good. And this tank is really maneuverable. When people ask me, and this is a really common question I get, is, what do you like better, the 113 or the 121? And, you'd say, well, obviously the 113 is the obvious choice, because, the 113 has more damage per minute. It's pretty much the same speed. It's got a better gun. It's got more penetration. The heat shells are better. Everything's better. But I have to say that I like the 121 better. I think it's just a much more enjoyable tank. Because that aiming time just makes it so fun, and not to mention, the 113 has one pet peeve for me, and it really just kills me, is the maneuverability, or the traverse speed on it, should I say. it turns so slow, it just makes me want to chop my own legs off by the time it's done, because you can literally have a medium permatrack you, and you're just dead because you cannot turn your tank. It's just such an awful feeling. And I hate that because you can have mediums just flank you, and your turret is also awful speed. The advantage of the 121 is that it has, it has about the same turret armor, by the way, as the 113, which means that I can run it pretty much in the same situations as I would with the 113, judging that people can just load heat shells and pen your upper plate in the 113 either way. So, to be honest, I think that the 121 is a better candidate over the 113 if you were thinking about getting it. And that really means a lot because the 113 is an excellent heavy. I would say to rate it higher than the 215, higher than the E5. I'd rank it right up there with the IS4. But you can see there, that was just a nasty shell, 459 into that STB. You couldn't roll that in a medium tank, and that's why it's so fun. And also, you saw I literally spotted that guy, turned the turret, it aimed in 1 second, and I fired. If you were in another medium tank, you might not have had the chance to be able to shoot that guy because your aiming time takes longer. Now, of course, if you're in like a 62A or a Leopard, you have the excellent aiming time on your side. And there is one downside to this tank, and that is the dispersion isn't spectacular. It's like running sort of, an IS. You can see that shell almost missed that IS-7 in the back. However, it doesn't really matter that the dispersion's bad because you can get that aiming circle so small. Well, it's not even a small aiming circle, but you can get it around the tank you're aiming at, and because this tank has a 120mm cannon, it means that your shells have a greater chance of overmatching the enemy's armor when it does hit their tank, which is a huge advantage over, the 110mm like the 62As use and tanks like that. And that is one reason why I really do like this tank, is just because it has that overmatching ability. You can see here IS-7 right in the side. That shell might have bounced in the 62A, and you never know. But also, this tank has nice hit points, 1910 I have on it. And when you see here, I can pretty much push it in this position. Now, that Foch did manage to penetrate us with a heat shell through the cheeks of the turret. That is a weak spot I will tell you guys to keep an eye out for, is the cheeks of the tank. Are a little bit weak. You can see that the cheeks, right where those like two little, curve things are on the turret, those are the weak spots. So what you want to do is when somebody's aiming at them, or you can tell they're aiming at your turret's weak spots, just back the tank up, back and forth, and turn your turret to the left and right a little bit so that they have a really hard time hitting you there, and it ends up hitting you in the gun manlet. Because you can see again, this was just a nice quick game I played, 3,300 damage. 6,000 credits. This tank doesn't lose that many credits, which is nice, judging that you saw me, bounce a couple heat shells. And the heat penetration, by the way, is really good on this tank. It has 330 something. So overall, I love this tank, and I hope that you guys try and go down this line because of this video. It is probably one of my favorite tier 10s in the game. I'd have to say it's ranked at number 2 or 3 right now, with just having the Foch and a couple other tanks ahead of it. I would really say to get this tank, though. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.